In the last stream, we were working on completely ripping out the entirety of our Tom's Simple Storage network and replacing it with our new Applied Energistics 2 network, which we have upgraded with the capability of autocrafting, and right at the end of the last episode, we also gave it the ability to wirelessly allow us to access all of the items in our A2 system from anywhere in the base. Now, one thing that I didn't do right at the end of the last episode is go to Options, Controls, Keybinds, and type in Wireless, because there is the option to open the wireless terminal. I'm going to go ahead and bind this to Z, and now, when I press Z, whilst holding the wireless crafting terminal anywhere in my inventory, it doesn't even need to be in my hand or in my hotbar, it just opens up the terminal and gives us access to everything in our system, and we don't even have to actually use the wireless crafting terminal. Even better, I think we can actually put the wireless crafting terminal into one of our curio slots here, and we get the extra inventory slot back, so now everything is just accessible anywhere we go at the press of a keyboard key. Even better still, we can now finally retire the Traveler's Sack here, because we now essentially have a gigantic Traveler's Sack that is the size of however big our AE2 system is, and so we can just store everything all the time inside of our AE2 system, because now whenever we want, for example, more logistical transporters, we can just search for them and grab them. So we don't have to carry them with us all the time, and we don't have to use the Traveler's Sack. Now, at the end of the last episode, we did kind of look a little bit at autocrafting, but we didn't really set up a ton of autocrafting. And so the very first thing that I would like to do in today's stream is get a few more of these ME pattern providers, which we should be able to make fairly easily because we got a bunch of the items required to make them in the last stream. And you'll notice over here that I have gone ahead and reoriented some of our mechanism machines here to make life a little bit easier from an autocrafting perspective. And I've also left a bit of space either side of our inscribers here, because I do also want to look at autocrafting with the inscribers today. I want to do something like this and like this. We'll come back to this in just a second. One of the first things I would like to do, though, is kind of try and get to a point where we can request these teleportation cores, because we've been making them a ton throughout the playthrough, and they're not impossible to make, but they're a little bit tedious to make. And so if we can have our Applied Energistics 2 system do this for us, then that's going to make our lives just a whole heck of a lot easier. And so essentially, all we're going to do here is, using the pattern terminal, we can go ahead and teach our system how to make, for example, the different tiers of alloy: the infused alloy, the reinforced alloy, and the atomic alloy. For each one of these, we just need to hit encode pattern, and then we do want to go ahead and left click on the redstone here, because it automatically puts in the 10 millibuckets of redstone. We don't want our Applied Energistics 2 system thinking that it needs to send liquid redstone to the infusing factory, because that's not something it needs to do. What we're going to do instead is we're going to encode all three of these patterns, every time being sure to get rid of the liquid that is automatically encoded in. We can then drop these in here, here, and here, and instead what we're going to do is we're going to use exporters to perpetually keep these machines full of their different liquids. So essentially what I want to do here is I want to put down 3 exporters like this. I want to make sure that each one of these machines is set to purple at the top, so input and output with auto eject on, so that we can receive the item from the pattern provider and then eject the final product back up as well. And then the only other thing we need to do is make sure that the back is set to extra, because then over here, we're going to tell these exporters to export the infused versions of the redstone, the diamonds, and the refined obsidian. From there, I think it's also going to be in our best interest to teach our enrichment chamber here how to make those enriched versions. So if we do something like this for the enriched redstone, like this for the enriched diamond, and like this for the enriched obsidian, this one's a little trickier because we also do need to go ahead and teach it how to make the refined obsidian dust, which is also done in the metallurgic infuser. So let's encode this. And then we also, on top of that, need to teach it how to make obsidian dust, encode, like so. And so here, what we're going to do is we're going to put the recipe for the obsidian dust into the crusher. So the crusher's over here. I'm actually going to move some of these machines around so that we don't have to run too much cable, because these, by the way, do connect to each other. And so does almost everything from AE2. So if, for example, I put another drive down next to this one, I don't have to actually run cable to the second drive. It will connect through the first drive the same channel limitations apply. So if I connect a cable up to this pattern provider, these will all come online, but it will use up 4 channels. It just means you don't have to run a cable to each individual item. Either way though, if we put our crushing factory down like this, and quickly make sure that that is set to point down, we can then place the obsidian dust recipe in here. We can put our recipe for all of the different tiers of enriched items into the pattern provider above the enrichment chamber, and then finally the one for refined obsidian dust wants to go in with the reinforced alloy above our diamond infusing factory. And so now what we can do is we can go ahead and tell, for example, this export bus to export enriched redstone. What that's going to do, once we connect it up, is check the system to see if we have any of this enriched redstone. And if we do, it's then going to go ahead and export it into here. That works fine if we have enriched redstone in the system. However, if we don't have any enriched redstone in the system, nothing's going to happen and this isn't going to work. Thankfully, what we can do is we can go ahead and make crafting card upgrades, these guys right here, that we can then put into our exporters. And essentially what these are going to allow us to do is tell the system to first check if we have any enriched redstone. If we don't have any enriched redstone, what it's then going to do is it's going to request that some enriched redstone be made, and then it's going to export it. And so it's going to say, hey, we don't have any enriched redstone, but I can see that you have the option to make it. So it's going to send redstone here, enrich it for us, and then export it round to the infusing factory, essentially automating this on our behalf. Now, one thing I think we should do here to make this a bit more efficient is go ahead and make some higher tier installers for our enrichment chamber, because right now it can only do 1 craft at a time. Boom and boom. I'm going to purposefully leave auto sort off here because I want this to be able to receive redstone, diamonds, refined obsidian all at the same time and be processing all of those simultaneously. What I don't want to happen is I don't want to have auto sort on and have all of the slots fill up with redstone and have the system waiting, not being able to produce enriched diamonds or enriched refined obsidian until that redstone is done. So I'm going to leave the auto sort off, and I think that's going to make things just a bit faster. So real quick here, let me go ahead and see if I can't connect these up. We currently have exactly 8 things connected, so in theory, we should be able to do something like this and just run that over, and we should be fine, because of course we are just using the basic Fluix cable here, so we do only have access to the 8 channels. If we can run that over to either our dense cable or to our controller, this should be kind of ready to go. Okay, so I've gone ahead and run a new dense cable here over in this direction and connected all of these up, and already you'll see that this is making enriched redstone for us automatically and sending it around to the infusing factory. So now this is hopefully always going to have redstone in it and is always going to be ready to do any of the crafts that we put into this pattern provider. Over here, I've done the same thing for these two. I've put in the enriched diamond and the enriched obsidian. We just need to configure these in the exact same way. Top is input and output, and the back is extra. And with those configurations, we should start to see the exact same thing happening with these two as well. So input, output, and extra, we should start seeing diamonds being sent around to the enrichment chamber, and we can see this filling up with diamond as well. And the same is true here. We'll see refined obsidian being produced and being sent around as well. And of course, the same is also true here for the crushing factory. If we want this to work, this doesn't need any extra. It just needs to be set to input and output at the top with auto eject on, and that should be pretty much good to go. There's definitely room for improvement in terms of speed and energy upgrades here, but this should now be capable of crafting the atomic alloys here, which is one of the most tedious parts of this craft. The second most tedious part is definitely the calculation processor, and so that's when these guys over here come into play. Thankfully, setting these up is basically the exact same setup, especially in newer versions of Applied Energistics. This used to be a much more tedious autocraft to configure, but with the new version of Applied Energistics 2, all we're going to do is we're going to take one of each inscriber here, so the silicon, the logic, the engineering, and the calculation, and we're going to put one of each of these into each different press. So logic, we'll do engineering, and we'll do calculation, like this. And I believe it should just be as simple over here as encoding the pattern for printed logic circuits. Again, here we're not going to tell it to send the inscriber logic press. You want to click that, get rid of it, encode, and then we're going to do the same thing here for engineering, encode, and finally for calculation, encode. Those are going to go into their respective inscribers. So this one here is logic, this one is engineering, and this one here is calculation. We also need to do the exact same thing, of course, for printed silicon as well. Boom and boom, and that's going to go in over here. And so in here, all we need to do is make sure that we set auto export to on. By default, it's set to produced items will not be auto-exported. If you turn this to on, as soon as the item is crafted, it will export up into the pattern provider in the exact same way as the mechanism machines. The reason that I've made an extra inscriber here is that at the end, we need to use this final inscriber for doing all of the final tier crafts. So this is where we're actually going to make all of our processors, because we can go ahead and encode the recipe for the logic processor, for the calculation processor, and if we get some more blank patterns here, also for the engineering processor as well. Blank patterns are pretty easy to come by, although we should probably look at getting these auto-crafted as well. If we just teach our system how to make these using our molecular assembler in the background there, we should then be able to just request those and have them produced for us as and when we need them. But for now, if we put all three of these in over here, like that, and make sure this is also set to auto-export, this should now just work. Again, all we need to do is hook this up to our pre-existing setup. So let me go ahead and break a cable here. We can then run this up. The inscribers, by the way, do not use up channels. You can use applied logistics to get power to them, like this. That's why that's connected. But these don't actually use any channels from the network. And so in theory now, we should just be able to kind of run this along in this direction. I'm doing it inside the bricks here because then we can kind of cover this up with facades. And in fact, if I do something like this, we can then potentially go ahead and pull from here. Now, one thing we can do, actually, if you don't want your cables to connect, for example, I don't want this to connect here because that's going to make our channel situation difficult to deal with. What we can do is we can use what are known as cable anchors to prevent our two cables from connecting. To do that, we just need to get a nether quartz cutting knife, which is nether quartz, iron, and sticks. I believe there's also a Certus quartz cutting knife you can make as well if you don't have nether quartz. Then you can use any ingot. I'm going to use copper because we have 13,000 copper. That can then make the cable anchors, which we can then use on our cables like this. And when I put a new cable down, these don't connect. And we can now safely run this all the way along to here like that. And that should bring these online. Nice. From there, of course, we can grab our facades out of the system and then very easily go ahead and just cover all of this up. So now I believe that we should be able to request those processes. So let's say I wanted to request some calculations. Let's say 10, start, and start. That should start by sending the, well, by the looks of it, we already had some printed calculation circuits in the system. We did, we had 13. I'm going to take those out. The good news is that the second part of the setup works, and now we have 31 of those. If I wanted to request even more though, let me give this another try. Middle mouse click, 10, and start. We should first see over here, this is going to make us the calculation circuit, and then it's going to send it over and make the calculation processor. All we need to do is make sure that all of these have all of their acceleration cards to make them as fast as they possibly can be. And then from there, if we actually wanted to finalize the automation of our teleportation core here, really all we have to do over in our encoding terminal is encode the actual recipe for teleportation cores, and then encode the recipe for advanced Technium Nuggets, and then we're pretty much good to go. We can then put those in over here. I do believe that right now this is actually not connected to the system, so I'm going to have to run that around to our controller, but once that is hooked up, I think we're pretty much good to go. Let's do a quick one of these just to bring that online. And then let's see, if we now search teleportation core, in theory, I should be able to request, say, 10 of these and start, and the system should just do that in the background without us having to actually lift a finger. And it did. Again, I'm assuming we had some of the alloys available to us. Let me take some of these out just to kind of stress test this a little bit. If I wanted 10 more of these, it should go ahead and just start processing all of the items that we need in all of the different forms that we need, and it's just going to get it done, which is so much easier than us having to do everything manually, and means, of course, that we can work on other things whilst that does its work in the background. And there we go, the teleportation cores are done. Definitely slower if we don't have any of the processors available, the calculation processors here, because the inscribers are by far and away the slowest part, even with the acceleration cards here. Thankfully, once we get to the next chapter of the questline, and once we unlock the ability to make these Entra-infused ingots, we can then look at upgrading and kind of replacing this inscriber here with some different blocks from A2 add-ons to allow us to make this even faster For now, though, this is still, in my opinion, superior to what we had before, and of course, if we wanted to here, we could always go ahead and request like a stack of these calculation processes. So in the future, if I need teleportation cores, there's already 64 calculation processes ready, and all of that is just going to work in the background whilst we work on other stuff. Speaking of other stuff, I would like to start work on the replication chapter of the quest book here. To do that, it does look like we are missing a quest, and that is for the Simulation Pearl. This is made in the Simulation Chamber from Enderman Predictions, and so this is where it actually becomes very useful for us that we use the Hostile Neural Networks mod as our method of automating Ender Pearls a few episodes ago, because we are now at a point where our Enderman data model is self-aware, and so every single time this finishes a simulation, we are guaranteed to get an Enderman prediction. In here, just before the episode started, I did stop this from making Ender Pearls, although to be fair, it's close to stopping on its own because we're almost fully backed up on Ender Pearls. But the reason I did that is that we do need some of these simulation pearls. These are used extensively in the replication mod, because to make the replica ingots, in this pack at least, we have to smelt replica dust, and replica dust is made by crushing simulation pearls. And so if we grab some of those simulation pearls, that should unlock for us this quest right here, just as soon as we make our replica dust. So let's go ahead and throw these in. Perfect. That's going to complete this quest here. That, in and of itself, should unlock for us this quest here. It totally does. And so now, if we go ahead and get like even more of these simulation pearls, we should then be able to crush those down and then smelt them over in our compressed furnace to make our first replica ingots. Once we have these, we can then start to make some of the other machines and items from the replica mod. The kind of basic premise around the replication mod, the elevator pitch, if you will, is kind of like EMC from Project E, but more technologically focused and maybe less OP, in my opinion. So here, we can start by making some matter network pipe. This is kind of just the cable that is used for the replication mod. To make this, we actually do need to combine 1 replica ingot with 8 ultimate universal cable. This is actually the highest tier of power cable for Mechanism, and does require that we go through all of the previous tiers of cable. Again, thankfully here, what we should be able to do is just go ahead and teach our system how to make all 4 tiers of cable. And at that point, the only problem that we would run into, real quick actually, I'm going to go ahead and shift right click to clear this. I'm going to use this pattern to teach our system how to make patterns in code. We'll throw that in over here, like that. And then I'm assuming that we have enough quartz glass to make this happen. We do, but we're probably also going to then want to teach our system how to make quartz glass as well, just so it has all of the requisite bits of knowledge. I'm also going to go ahead and teach it how to make quartz dust as well. So the quartz glass can go in over here, and the quartz dust, of course, goes in with the crushing factory, like that, at which point I should then be able to go ahead and request, say, a stack of blank patterns, start, and that's going to go ahead and just make those for me ready to use over here. Back over here, we can then go ahead and teach our system how to make the 4 tiers of universal cable. The only problem we're going to run into is that we can't currently teach it how to make basic universal cable, at least not automatically, because we don't have the ability at the moment to automate these copper wires. For that, we would have to automate the metal press, which is on my list of things to do. For now, though, if I put all of these in over here, like so, we should be able to just request 8 ultimate cable, start, and it's going to go through the whole process, the whole rigmarole of making all of the different alloys for us, and it's just going to put them in the system when it's ready to go. Nice. So this is going to allow us to connect all of our different machines together. And the basic setup that we're going to need to get started here kind of involves all of the different items here. So I'm going to go ahead and make one of these matter tanks. The matter tanks are what are used to store the different types of matter. The idea here is that with the replication mod, unlike EMC, where everything is just given a number, and then you can convert it into any other item if you have enough of the number, with the replication mod, everything is broken down into one of, I believe, like 6 elements. You can see those elements if you hover over an item in JEI and hold shift. You'll see this one has the carrot-looking element and the green element. I believe there are 6 different elements, and in fact, the whole purpose of this section of the questline is to get the unstable matter here. And if I'm not mistaken, I think unstable matter has one of each type. It does. There are actually 8 different elements, and they're all listed. We need all of them to make unstable matter. And so the idea is that we're going to use replication to break down different resources that we have to get each of these different elements, and then we're also going to use the same replication mod to then create this unstable matter from those different elements. And essentially, you want to have one matter tank per element, and so we are going to want to get 8 matter tanks if we want this to work. To do that, we're probably going to want to grab, you guessed it, even more simulation pearls, give those a quick crush and a quick smelt to get even more replica ingots. Whilst we wait for that though, we can also look at making some of the other components of the network. So we need a disintegrator. This is used to break down items into their base elements. We need a replicator. This is used to do the opposite. It's used to take elements we have and turn them into actual usable items. And then over on the right side here, we have an identification chamber, a memory chip, and a chip storage. And these 3 are used in combination to teach your replication system how to craft certain items, because it doesn't know by default how to craft everything, and then the replication terminal is used to access all of these machines at once. So let me grab the replica dust. We've got loads of it. Let's throw that in over here to get even more replica ingots. If we want to make the disintegrator, we do need another matter tank, actually, just to make this happen, and we need even more replica ingots. Let's go ahead and make this guy. Perfect. Then to make the replicator itself is, again, pretty straightforward. We do need 5 replica ingots. Boom and boom. Nice. Then we need our identification chamber. It is, again, 5 more ingots with some glass panes that I hope we have. We totally do. Fantastic. The memory chip, slightly easier, just requires 3 of the ingots. The chip storage is fairly similar. We need 4 replica ingots for that. And we also need 1 iron trapdoor. Boom and boom. And then finally, the replication terminal is an ME crafting terminal with 8 replica ingots. We do get 8 terminals here, which I'm not quite sure is strictly necessary. One nifty thing here that we can do with applied energistics to autocrafting, you'll see right now that we actually don't have enough quartz glass to make the illuminated panels, but when I hover over this, it says you can control click to craft the unavailable items. So if I hold control and then click start, it's going to go ahead and make that missing quartz glass so that I can then grab it from here and use it to complete the craft. Cool. From there, we should then be able to make our ME terminal, and from there, our ME crafting terminal, which we can then use to make the replication terminal. Nice. And that is basically all the items from the replication mod. There are a few more quests. For example, there is a quest to make the block, and there's also a quest to make the AE2 replication bridge, which we'll come to a little bit later on once we actually have this system set up. So, if I am not mistaken, over here, we should be able to go ahead and put down our disintegrator, put down our replicator, put down our identification chamber, throw down our chip storage, and then connect those up using the cable. We're then going to go ahead and also throw down a terminal. I'm going to put the terminal down maybe right at the end, like this. It just needs to be somewhere that we can access it. And so in here, you'll see that we have the different types of matter, which are earth, nether, organic, ender, metallic, precious, living, and quantum. Those are the 8 different kinds. We are going to want to get different matter tanks so that we can store all of those different kinds of matter. And I think we actually have enough replica ingots here to make 8 matter tanks now. We totally do. Cool. I do believe that we can store a small amount of matter inside of the disintegrator. So for example, if I grab, let's say, an iron ingot out of the system, the iron ingot has just metallic. And if I put that into the disintegrator and give it power, it will turn that into metallic, and it will store a little bit of that metallic inside of the disintegrator. But in an ideal world, we do want to have these matter tanks down so that we can store a larger amount of all of the different types of matter. Now, to do that, I do need even more of the ultimate cable. Let's request another 8 of those and start. That might take a little bit longer to come in, but once we have that, we should be able to do this and kind of connect all of those up. Never mind, it is already done. I do really appreciate that in new versions of AE2, it tells you in the world when an autocraft is complete. With all of these connected, back over here, we now just need to run our basic universal cable from here round to the bottom of all of these machines. Never mind, it turns out all you have to do is connect the power cable to the matter network pipe, and then it will provide power to all of the machines that need it. Nice. And so now, what we should be able to do is break things down. As you'll see, this has taken the iron, and over here we have 9 metallic out of a possible 256,000 that we can store in this tank, and in the terminal, we should be able to see that we have 9 metallic in our network. Cool. Now, the way the quest book wants us to do this here is it wants us to get this matter blueprint to unlock the ability to make unstable matter. So to do that, we do have to get the unstable matter blueprint. That's going to require 24 elite research and 4 singularities. Singularities are not something we've made just yet, but should be fairly easy for us to make. So to make singularities, these are actually made almost in the exact same way as the matter balls here. All we have to do is swap out the mode of the matter condenser. By default, it is in condensed to matter balls. We want to change that to singularities. To do that, I think we do have to change the ME storage component, because in order to make singularities, you need at least a 64K ME storage component to do that. With the automation that we've set up today, this really shouldn't be too difficult, and to be fair, I do think it's probably worth getting another pattern provider, putting that down over here to give us even more space for autocrafting, because we're almost out of space on our first pattern provider. And then I do think it's worth just teaching our system how to make these 64K storage components. We only need the one for now, but we can, of course, also use this later on down the line to get us bigger crafting CPUs, to get us bigger storage disks, and really any of the crafting components from Applied Energistics that require some kind of storage component. So with those taught, can I go ahead and request a 64K ME storage component? I can. We have all the items, or our system knows how to make all the items, and it only requires 789 bytes, which is smaller than the 1024 bytes available to each of our crafting CPUs, and so this should just work. Also, at any point in time, you can click the crafting status button at the top right of the terminal, and it will show you what's currently being crafted and how it's doing, but look at that, we are done. Nice. So back over here, let's put this in like this, and let's swap this to condense into singularities. The only real difference here is that this requires 256,000 items as opposed to the 256 required for the regular matter ball. So it does require 1,000 times as many items. Of course, right now we are kind of doing that for free with our pump here. The pump does only have 5 of 8 speed upgrades, so we could look at adding 3 more of those like that to make this hopefully just that little bit faster, and you'll see now that is going up much, much faster than it was previously, and we kind of just need to let that run until it has 4 singularities for us, at which point we can then use those singularities in the making of our unstable matter blueprint. While we wait for that though, let me show you how this works over here. So for example, let's say we wanted to teach our replication system how to make diamonds. Diamonds are made from precious, and so if we wanted to do that, we'd have to find other items that contain precious. For example, we've got loads of copper, right? And each copper ingot has 2 precious, each diamond requires 36 precious, and so in theory, we can use 18 copper here to make 1 diamond and still have some metallic left over. The way this works is we use the disintegrator here to break down copper. Thankfully, this does auto sort, and so it's going to go ahead and break all of that down. Then what we need to do is we need to use our memory chip to teach our system diamonds. That is done over in the identification chamber. Here we put in the memory chip, like so, and we put in the diamond. This goes through the process, I think twice, of filling this arrow up, so it's going to take 10 seconds 2 times, and once that's done, it's going to take up one of the 16 slots inside of the memory chip. You'll see the first time here, it's done 50%, and once this second pass has finished, we should see diamonds at 100%. It does use up the diamond, and we now have 15 slots left, but now over in the chip storage, you can put up to 8 chips in here, like so, and now if we look in here, we have diamonds available. Our system knows how to make diamonds, and it shows 1 because we have exactly 36 precious. And so if I go ahead and click on this and click replicate, it should go ahead and inside of the replicator begin making a diamond. It's not blisteringly fast, and I actually don't know if there are any speed upgrades we can make, but back over here, it's put that into the output slot at the bottom of the replication terminal. We can take that, and we've essentially turned 18 copper into 1 diamond. Pretty cool stuff. We can, of course, do that again if we wanted to, but the main thing for us is that we need to make this unstable matter. And the unstable matter, as we saw earlier, is made from all of the different kinds of matter that are available, and then once we have that unstable matter, we can use it in the crafting of things like the nuclear reactor. Back over here, this is working, but it's really, really slow, and we do need 4 of these. And so I think what I might do real quick here is go ahead and craft up a few more pumps, and maybe set them up on the lower platform somewhere to allow us to make even more water even faster, and hopefully see if we can increase the rate at which we are storing energy inside this matter condenser to make these singularities just that little bit faster. So I've moved the setup down here to the lower level of the base, and I've thrown down 5 pumps. I have fully upgraded these with speed and energy upgrades. So now the problem is actually our basic mechanical pipe here is the limiting factor. Of course, as we've seen before, we can use alloys here to increase the tier of this fairly easily. And we can do the exact same thing actually with the reinforced alloy as well, which of course now we can request that our system make 4s. Fantastic. And we can right click that right about here. That hopefully is fast enough, although it actually looks like it might not be. Surprisingly, that still looks like it's not fast enough. We can, of course, take it one step further with the atomic alloys and fully go for it here. That might well prove fast enough. It looks like it is, and hopefully we see this going up faster, although it really doesn't look to be that fast. It looks like we've actually... No, so all we've done there is we filled the buffer inside of the ultimate mechanical pipe at the top there. You'll see it's filled up with almost 1 million millibuckets, but it's not put it in fast enough. Let me get some more of these mechanical pipes, and let me try doing something like this, kind of really saturating the sides here to see if that makes that any faster. And then, of course, also, it's at this point where we could definitely do with upgrading these as well. I do think that's helped a little bit, because now we only have 1 pump that's actively backing up on water. The rest of these are not actively backing up on water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect up the bottom as well here with pipes. I'll probably upgrade all of these actually to ultimate, and we'll see if that finally gives us the speed that we need. This does appear to be working. We've got, I guess, 5 pumps and then 5 connections on the side of the matter condenser. It's a little bit awkward. I could probably do with moving it forward by 1, because now we can't really extract from the matter condenser. That doesn't necessarily matter for the singularities, because we can just take them out. We only need 4 of them, and the first one is almost done. But for the matter balls, when we re-swap this back to making matter balls, that is where it's going to become dicey, and where we could kind of do with being able to extract from at least one side. So I guess at that point I could do with moving this forward by 1 so we can actually extract. And not too long later, we have our first of 4 singularities. Cool. So we'll leave that running, and hopefully it's not going to take too long now to get all of the singularities that we need. The one last quest actually to make in the replication quest line here is the AE2 replication bridge. For this, we need 4 ME storage buses, 4 pattern providers, and 1 replica block. None of that should really be too difficult for us to do. The pattern providers are fairly straightforward. I am, though, going to go ahead actually real quick and make some more pattern providers. I'm also going to teach my system a bunch of kind of the core components of Applied Energistics 2 here using the encoding terminal, so that we don't have to keep making things like the formation and annihilation cores over and over and over again every time we want to craft stuff like this up. And a bunch of pattern encoding later. In here, if I go and change the view to craftable, you can kind of get an idea of all of the stuff that we've taught our system to make. It's mostly just A2 components, so I did put the crafting table in here. That's needed for some of the crafts as well. We put the Fluix cable in. We've got quartz fiber, pistons, ME interfaces, the dense cable recipe, all the way up to the smart cable is taught, acceleration cards. I also did crafting cards. We did import buses, export buses, and then the chests and the planks were already taught as well. So I've added a few more there. Hopefully that's just going to make things a lot faster going forward. We can request those items. We don't have to manually craft them every time. One thing we don't have that we could potentially do with getting here actually is yet another terminal. Specifically here, I would like to get the pattern access terminal. This one is, again, not too difficult to make. In fact, it looks like we have everything to make it. And if I put this down here, this shows us all of our pattern providers in one handy list. And so if I wanted to add something to this, for example, over here I have taught our system how to make the 4 different tiers of circuit, the basic, the advanced, the elite, and the ultimate control circuits for mechanism. What I could do is over here, let's imagine I just crafted these like this. I could then come over here, and above that inscriber, this one right here, we can just put these patterns in like this, and we don't have to run over to wherever the actual pattern provider is. We can put them in remotely, and the terminal is going to place them into the respective pattern provider, which is super useful, and it just makes it a lot easier to manage all of our stuff going forward. And you can even see the 4 that are connected to our molecular assembler over there as well. Those are also now available in the system. And so now that that is done, we can hopefully kind of pivot back to this replica bridge. For that, we can hopefully go ahead and get ourselves some storage buses. The storage buses are going to require 4 ME interfaces. Let me request 4 of those and start. They are also going to require some pistons as well, which we did just teach. It would probably have been a decent idea for us to just teach it how to make the storage buses, but I don't really think that we're going to need that many storage buses going forward. So hopefully we can just craft 4 of these and then do something like this. And that gets us the AE2 replication bridge. Now, I have not used this before. Thankfully, there is a chapter in the guidebook here. The bridge acts as a translator between the two systems, allowing replication matter data to be accessible within the AE2 ME system and vice versa. This enables you to view matter quantities in the replication network, request replications through AE2 autocrafting systems. To place the bridge, follow these steps. Place the bridge block at the point that you can reach both networks, connect the AE-ME cable to one side of the block, connect the replication matter pipe to the other side of the block. Optimal setup, use only one replication network. By default, the bridge can handle 20 replicators simultaneously. To support a larger number of replicators, use a crafting CPU with a higher number of crafting co-processing units. Okay, so I think all we really need to do then is just kind of put this down somewhere over here that we can connect both of these together. So I'm going to put this potentially like right here, like that. We do have dense cable running fairly close to this. And of course, now we can go ahead and request more dense cable. I don't need it to be smart. I just need it to be dense. Hopefully that's going to come in fairly quickly. It's going to come in somewhat quickly. There are things we can do to make our crafting in the molecular assembler faster. You'll see currently this limiting factor is that we just have the one molecular assembler. What you can do, and what I should do here, is teach our system how to make molecular assemblers, because we're definitely going to need more of these going forward. Let me go ahead and quickly encode that pattern and then whack it in down here as well. If I were to go ahead and request another molecular assembler, start, we can then go ahead and place that down next to the other pattern providers. For example, if we wanted to make the dense cable faster, we could put it down like right here. And this now gives this pattern provider 2 molecular assemblers to work with. Now, I'm fairly certain that, I'm going to take these out just so we can kind of see this happening. I'm fairly certain that if I requested more dense cable, that it will only use one of these at a time. You'll see it's kind of alternating. It is using both, and I think that is making it slightly faster, but it's kind of alternating which one it uses. I think if we wanted to get the maximum benefit out of this, we need the crafting co-processing units, which are these guys right here. This is an add-on to the crafting CPU that we're building, and we should also probably go ahead and teach this as well. So we'll encode that, and we'll encode the crafting unit like that, and we get to both of those again in down here, boom, and boom. And the idea here is that if we take one of these crafting co-processing units, this will allow our pattern provider to use both molecular assemblers simultaneously. So all we have to do is put this down next to the crafting storage. Now, awkwardly, the way I've put this down, it's right next to some basic universal cable. I'm going to put it right here for now, like this. And this is now the same CPU block, but it has a crafting co-processing unit. And so if we were to once again request another 10 dense cable, this time I do want to make sure that we use the CPU that has the crafting co-processing unit. If I hit start, we should see it's using both of them simultaneously. It's a small tweak, but the more of these we add, the more apparent this becomes. If I were to request like 3 more of these, we could really surround this pattern provider with molecular assemblers. I do think that the more molecular assemblers you have, the more of the crafting co-processing units you need. Let me do this, and this, and this. In fact, it probably gives us a decent explanation if I press G. The crafting co-processing unit makes the system send out ingredient batches from ME pattern providers more often by making the CPU tick faster. This allows them to keep up with machines that process quickly. An example of this is a pattern provider surrounded by molecular assemblers being able to push ingredients faster than a single assembler can process, and thus distributing the ingredient batches between the surrounding assemblers. I didn't actually know that it worked by making the CPU tick faster. That's interesting because I did notice that kind of one of the limiting factors over here in terms of how fast the inscriber worked seemed to be how fast the ME pattern provider put items into the inscriber. And I do wonder if just having more crafting co-processing units would make this faster, because with the acceleration cards, the inscriber becomes very fast, and I think that the limiting factor is how fast the ME pattern provider places a recipe into the inscriber. Unlike with a mod like Refined Storage, you actually can't put acceleration cards into the pattern provider itself, but I'm assuming that if I were to go ahead and request, let's say, 32 of these next, and let's make sure that we use the recipe with the crafting co-processing unit, this might actually insert that little bit faster. To really test this, I've made even more crafting co-processing units. This looks a little wacky, but should potentially work, actually. So this has got a ton of them now. And over here, we've put down the extra molecular assemblers around here. So now, if we were to request, I'm going to go for even more dense cable just so we can see this happening. If we go ahead and request a number that we can actually do and click start, we should see this using even more of these molecular assemblers. And the times when it's not are when I think we're waiting on other machines to complete their crafts. But that is now going way quicker than it was before. And I'm hopeful that over here, this is done with those logic processors. If I was to request 10 and I was to use the CPU that has no crafting processors, this is putting the gold in, I think, a little bit slower than it was before. I'm then going to try it again with our newly upgraded 5 crafting co-processing system, and we'll see if that is like even faster or if that has no change to the inscribers, because I know that it works with the molecular assemblers, but I've not actually seen if this is faster. So now let's go 10 next and pick this guy. That definitely inserted more of those in quicker, which is good. I guess the limiting factor now is just how fast this is working, actually. Let me put more acceleration cards in here, because this guy is not fast enough. If I do that, I kind of want to see it put, there we go. This is actually faster, because before there was a strict delay between when this finished and when the next batch arrived, and that is now way faster. Whether or not we need all 5 is definitely yet to be seen. The final thing we can, of course, do to make this even faster is we can make even more acceleration cards, and if we put those into all of the molecular assemblers here, that's, of course, going to make things just even faster than they already are. And I think the best bet, to be fair, is to make a lot of these molecular assemblers and kind of create a bit of a web here of pattern providers and molecular assemblers. Of course, we can't access that middle pattern provider now, but that's kind of where this terminal comes in, because that allows us to access it remotely. And remember that the molecular assemblers don't actually use any channels. The only thing that uses channels is the pattern providers. So you can put down really as many of the molecular assemblers as you like around the pattern providers, and you'll see that that was way faster than the first time we did it, because it had access to all of the molecular assemblers and it used them all at full speed. So now if we were to request another 20 of these, we're actually fully out of Fluix crystals now, so we'd have to make more of those. Let me quickly make some more of those over in the arc furnace. Never mind, we already have some ready to go. And then let's do another quick test here, a final test. If I were to request another 10 of these, compared to just a few minutes ago, this now comes in a little bit faster. I think the limiting factor, though, now is a different machine. It's the crushing factory, which is already at full speed, but we now know that these are not our bottleneck, and for certain crafts, this setup is definitely, I think, the preferred way to go. Let me go and check down here. Do we have more singularities? We do. Would you look at that? Perfect. Before I put those to use, because we do now have all 4 of them, let's quickly get this guy over here connected up, because the whole point of all of this was to get enough dense cable so that we could run this just a little bit further over, like this, and then look at connecting that to our replication bridge. Cool. So with that connected up, presumably now we can use this both ways. We'll come back to that in just a second, though, because now we should be able to take all of the singularities, if we go back to stored and crafting, and we should also be able to take our elite research, and if we combine the elite research with the singularities, that's going to get us, of course, the unstable matter blueprint, which we can then use with a simulation pearl to unlock the matter blueprint. And the idea here is that we're going to use this and scan it in the identification chamber to add it to one of our memory chips, and then that memory chip is going to give us the ability to make the unstable matter. Boom, and boom. And just like the diamonds beforehand, we can go ahead and take out our chip storage and put that in here, boom, and boom, to teach the chip the matter blueprint. Cool, so now that's done. We can put this back in here, and in theory, I think once we have enough of all of the different kinds of matter, we should be able, that being 12 of each matter, we should be able to go ahead and make our first unstable matter. So let me quickly have a look at what items are going to give us all of the required matter here. So it looks like between ender pearls, conveyor belts, and glowstone, we can actually get most of the things we need here. I don't know if this is going to be our best option long term, but just as a proof of concept, let me break down some ender pearls. That's going to get us most of the organic, the ender, and the quantum that we need. And then we'll also go ahead, of course, and throw in the glowstone and the conveyor belts. I don't really think we've made much glowstone yet. It looks like we can make it in the purification chamber with nickel or zinc dust and a bit of oxygen. Okay, so I did make a mistake here. It turns out that despite what it says on the matter blueprint itself, on here, it says scan it in the identification chamber to get the information, which is what we did. However, if we read the quest book says that we have to right-click on a chip storage with a chip inside to learn how to craft something new. So we have had to make another one of these matter blueprints. Thankfully, that didn't require more singularities. We just have to right-click this onto here, shift right-click here. There we go, and now it's taught the unstable matter, and so now in here we can see that unstable matter. I don't know if we can see the unstable matter in here. We can't. For some reason, the bridge appears to not be working. We've tried picking this up and putting it back down and doing all kinds of stuff. I've been trying to figure it out with the Twitch chat. Other people are saying that they've done exactly what I've done and they can see things in their terminal. We can see, for example, how much metallic we have, so it is connected, but apparently we're also supposed to be able to see the stuff that's craftable, so it should show us the ability to craft diamonds via the AE2 system. For whatever reason, that's not working. I'll have to look into it, but we should now be able to go ahead and replicate one unstable matter, and over here, we can see that unstable matter is being made. Just like before, it's going to place it into the inventory, and then using that unstable matter, next time we can come back and we can start looking at things like the nuclear reactor here, and progressing on further, of course, with our quest towards ultimate technium, but that is going to have to wait until next time. Real quick, between streams, I did go ahead and make a few tweaks down here, actually. I tried to, recenter the platform, because before when we set this up, I realized I'd not centered it, and so you'll see I've made the platform a little bit wider here to accommodate that. I did have to move the XNet controller. The good news there is that the XNet controller does retain all of its information when you break it, and so you can safely move it without losing all of the data and having to reconfigure it. I've not yet moved this bit. You'll see that's not quite centered anymore, but that is on the list of things to do. And I've also moved the 3 entangled blocks for each of our Technium machines down from the roof. They were previously kind of up there, but I've now moved this pillar here, and so instead I've moved these down, and I think it looks a lot nicer down here. Anyway, we can quite easily see what we have in each of those Technium machines, and we can export to them just like we were doing previously. And if I grab my wrench here, you can see that this just runs kind of up and around through this pillar to our pre-existing dense cable. So next time we will come back and we will start working on this nuclear reactor, which is hopefully going to allow us to begin making polonium and plutonium, and eventually antimatter, which is one of the many items required for the autocrafting of ultimate technium, which is also something we can hopefully start to work on in the coming episodes, but that is going to have to wait, of course, for a future episode, because I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Techopolis 3 there.